I was judged by the same system I teach, so I'm going to walk through exactly where I broke alignment, exactly which axis were involved, and exactly how the structure still stands even when the teacher breaches it. So I'm not going to pretend the breach didn't happen. I'm not going to hide it or take the video down, and I'm not going to turn it into some fake polished apology either. So I'm going to teach from it. Because what happened in that video wasn't just frustration, it was a breach of axis alignment. And if I teach the Yahusha Codex and the 12 axis, then I need to be honest enough to say exactly where I broke alignment. So let's get into it. Axis 7, shepherds. This is the first place I broke alignment. A shepherd doesn't treat the whole flock like one body of takers. A shepherd separates. He distinguishes. He knows the difference between the sincere, the weak, the immature, the wolves, and the parasites. What I did in that moment was speak as if the whole crowd was one thing, and that wasn't right. The truth I was naming was real. The exploitation was real. The burnout was real. But the way I released it hit the sincere and the selfish in one sweep, and that's not how Axis 7 works. Axis 7 isn't soft because a true shepherd can rebuke hard, but he still has to divide rightly. That's where I breached. Axis 8, hidden devotion. This is the second place I broke alignment. There are parts of the burden that can be taught publicly, and there are parts that should remain between me and Yahuwah until they're settled. What happened in that video was that too much of the inner wound spilled out in public while it was still raw. That's not the same thing as honesty. That is breach. Hidden devotion isn't fake silence. It's guarded interior life. It's refusing to turn the deepest pain into public release before it's been purified. That's where I stepped out of alignment. Axis 9, Mammon. This is where people twisted what I said. I didn't break Axis 9 by telling the truth that labor costs something. I didn't break Axis 9 by saying support matters. And I didn't break Axis 9 by saying that endless free consumption isn't sustainable. That's not greed, and it's not merchandising, and that's not for gain. Axis 9 is broken when money rules the motive, when exchange becomes God, when truth becomes a product, and that's not what I was doing. But this axis still matters here because people immediately tried to reduce the whole issue to money, and that's exactly what Axis 9 exposes. Mammon distorts value. It makes people think spectacle deserves constant support while real labor should somehow be free forever. So no, I didn't violate Axis 9 the way people accuse me of, but Axis 9 absolutely sits underneath this whole conversation. Axis 11, internal court. This is one of the clearest breaches. Internal court means a thing gets judged inwardly before it gets released outwardly. The fire has to pass through the inner court first. What happened in that video is that the public release came before the inner court was settled. The pain was real, the burden was real, the pressure was real, but I released it while the inner court was still burning. That's exactly why it came out the way it did. And Axis 11 doesn't mean suppress everything. It means the inner court has to rule before the outer word is released. And that didn't happen. So, yes, I broke alignment there. Axis 12, remnant. This is the last major one. The remnant aren't the crowd. They aren't the consumers. They aren't the parasites. And they're not the mockers. They are the few who are actually serious. And what happened in the breach is that the faithful few got caught in the same blast as the takers. And that's not how Axis 12 works. Axis 12 is about proper separation, proper preservation, proper identification of the few. If I say the remnant matters, then I have to speak in a way that doesn't crush the sincere along with the careless. And that's why Axis 12 matters so much here. And there is one more axis that was touched, even if it wasn't a main breach. It's Axis 5, covenant loyalty. Not because I stopped loving Yahuwah, or not because the whole walk was false, but because in the breach, pain and exhaustion started driving the release more than covenant order did. And that matters because Axis 5 is about allegiance under cost. What outranks what, and what rules the release. And in that moment, the burden was speaking louder than the order. So I need to say that honestly too. Now, let me say this clearly. My breach doesn't cancel the truth. My frustration doesn't cancel the structure. And my misalignment in that moment doesn't mean the whole walk is false. It means I hit a wall. It means I breached, and it means the axis proved real enough to judge me too. And that's the point. The 12 axis aren't just for other people. They judge the teacher too. So this is the correction. Axis 7, shepherds, I should have separated better. Axis 8, hidden devotion, I should have guarded the inner wound better. Axis 9, mammon, I was naming the labor and value, not greed, but people twisted it. Axis 11, internal court, I released it before the inner court had settled it. Axis 12, remnant, the sincere got caught in the same blast as the takers. And secondarily, Axis 5, covenant loyalty, pain and exhaustion were driving the release more than covenant order should have allowed. So that's the teaching, that's the correction, and that's what I mean when I say I was out of alignment. Not that the truth changed, that I breached it and how I carried it.